Hello and welcome to the Slow Thinking podcast with me, Seb Santa Barbara.
And me, Izzy Savage, and welcome to our first episode.
Yeah, our first episode. This is it. We're finally doing it. We've spoken about getting this podcast out for a long time, meeting up to do this together and working on a podcast with each other, and we're finally doing it. So, there's the start of something big, let's hope.
Yeah, it's so exciting, and I'm really enjoying planning and working on this. And yeah, shall we start by just, letting our listeners know a little bit about who we are, what we do, why we're doing this?
Absolutely, yeah, because up until this point, you've just tuned in, and some of you might know who we are, and other people will be thinking, who are these guys? What do they do? So, yeah, so Izzy and I are friends. We've been friends for a while now, and we met through a love of travel, really. We've both done van life travel in the past, and we also have a bit of a shared interest in mental health. I guess, why don't you start off and tell everybody what you do, and then I'll follow you.
Okay, yeah. I just want to add to that we were at our friend's 30th birthday party, and we didn't know each other at that point. It was a mutual friend, and we sat, and I think one of our friends said, Seb's a van person, go talk to him. And so I sat down, and we didn't stop speaking all evening, did we? It was just lovely to connect. So
yeah, somebody said you should go speak to Izzy. She's a van person. I think they both felt we were a little bit lost, and then we started just hanging out, we're just chatting to each other, and we spoke about vans for about 4 hours, didn't we? It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah. And then it progressed from there, really, about mental health, didn't it? I mean, to give a bit more context, I am an art psychotherapist and an ecotherapist. And as you listen to the podcast, you'll get to know a little bit more about what those things mean, what an art therapist is, and where ecotherapy comes into it. But perhaps I can just say very briefly, for those who are kind of unfamiliar with these roles or titles. As an art psychotherapist, I'm kind of like any counsellor or therapist that you might come across, but I use creativity to help the people that I work with to express themselves or explore what's going on for them. And specifically, I work with people who struggle with things like anxiety and burnout, and just trying to, support people to slow down a little bit, and, kind of learn to feel safe enough to feel grounded throughout the day. So those are kind of some main topics that I really like working with people. And yeah, the ecotherapy is kind of really linked to the travel stuff that we chat about, because we're both really passionate about kind of really being outdoors and connecting with nature, feeling connected with the outdoors. And so my ecotherapy work just kind of adds to my art therapy in terms of, helping people to learn perhaps tools and techniques to feel a little bit more connected to the outdoors. So yeah, as I say, you'll get to know a little bit more about kind of my approach and what all that means as we go. But yeah, it's so nice to kind of come together with Seb, because we've got really different backgrounds, but really, it's really interesting how much we've got in common. So Seb, do you want to share who you are?
I'm just here for the three therapy, really. I'm here for the three therapy, and just to chat to Izzy. She's got a very relaxing voice, so that's why I just come here just to do this. No, I am a travel writer. I built a website called Van and Clan with a friend back in 2017, as I was beginning to start my van life journey. I moved out of a terraced house, sold everything I owned, and went into a camper van that I lived in for 5.5 years, traveling over Europe and America, writing articles about vans, meeting camper van companies, meeting people who live the van life. I've gone on to write 3 books that have been published in 6 different languages about travel. So that's my background. I I've basically done a lot of alternative living in my life. When I left the van and then lived on a narrowboat for a little while, so I'm all about alternative ways of living and kind of breaking away from the norm and sustainable, ethical travel and living. They're my kind of key interests. But also, I am a massive mental health advocate, and while I'm not a therapist, I like to read a lot about mental health books. I've suffered a lot with anxiety in the past myself, so I'm constantly on a quest to find more knowledge about what makes my brain like it is and what makes other people's brains do. What they do, and how we can kind of combat certain things, and also the link that travel has on mental health as well. Why we choose to travel, why we choose to do stuff in specific ways, why we choose to live certain lifestyles. And that's essentially what this podcast is going to be, a bit of a meeting of a kind of meeting of minds about travel and mental health. And as it progresses through, we'll touch on different subjects and different topics, and what makes humans tick a little bit, and why we kind of do the things we do, why we make the choices we do, how to do the things we decide to do. A little bit of trying to kind of answer everything to do with mental health and travel and how they intertwine, which could be the biggest topic that we've ever endured together. um and I try to be as serious as possible, which isn't always that easy for me. But it'll be yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of unpacking these things with Izzy, and looking at how our interest in our lives sort of intertwine with these topics and coming out from different perspectives as well.
Yeah, yeah. I really am interested in kind of that bringing a bit of our personal experience, bringing a bit of kind of our professional experience in as well, and yeah, seeing if we can help others, support others, or make others feel less alone, perhaps, when it comes to travel and the ups and downs of it. And yeah.
Well, with that in mind, what is our first episode topic, Izzy Savage?
Our first episode is we're going to be looking at, as Seb's just mentioned, sustainable and ethical travel, which is a really, really interesting one. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on that, actually, Seb, because you're really living that. And although I'm quite rooted in one place now, I started to explore that a little bit when I was living in my van. But you're kind of really living this and exploring this, taking your trips away and in various different ways. And so yeah, it's going to be exciting. People to get some tips and ideas, I think.
Absolutely. Well, with that in mind, let's crack on into the first episode, and you guys can hear my dulcet voice and Izzy's facts, and hopefully learn something new.
See you there.
Okay, so today we're back with a new topic, and we're going to talk about sustainable and ethical travel, and kind of break that down as to what that means on the whole, what it means to me and Izzy, how to go about it, things to look out for while you're traveling or planning traveling, and the impact that has on the world in general and us as people. So basically, I've thought of every single topic that I can think of to do with this Izzy, and we're going to try and fit it all into the space of 45 minutes or an hour. So let's see if we can do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. That was quite broad. We've got lots of space to explore this. And it's a really interesting topic, I think. And obviously, so it's cheesy to say, but so current. I mean, everything that we do now is sort of going to potentially impact the environment or the climate, or, so much is talking about it these days. And I think it's really important that more and more companies, more and more people are learning how to travel more sustainably. And I think we've thrown in the word ethically as well, because I think, for me, I think they go hand in hand, and we'll unpack that a little bit. But yeah, I wonder if we can start with perhaps chatting a bit about what we mean by sustainable, ethical travel.
Well, let's see if I have the same kind of viewpoint as you with this. So I would say sustainable travel is is a lot to do with being self-sufficient. That's how I'd see it. So I sort of see, in my travels that I had in my van, I had solar panels. I was kind of using renewable energy all the time. I was kind of collecting spring water to do my washing in. Um, I was using ecological soaps and stuff to wash in lakes and things like that. So I guess it was like not using up lots of um, disposable materials or burning lots of fossil fuels or anything. I mean, let's face it, my van ran on diesel, which isn't great. But when it came to energy and being sustainable in that respect, I was kind of self-sufficient and trying to do my bit to kind of be as clean a traveler as possible. And I don't mean did I use deodorant that morning? I mean like did I get these ethically sourced goods? Did I try and help the local farmer? Did I buy cheese off a man who drove around to my van from his boot in Sardinia at 8 a.m. in the morning? I did, those kind of things. So like that's how I sort of see um, being sustainable. Is that kind of the same way that you would describe it, or have I just spent the past 2 minutes going down a wrong path?
I think you're spot on. I feel like that's podcast done, to be honest. You've thrown
Right.
in like your own experience.
Yeah.
We can take some of our own tips from that.
Catch you later,
Perfect.
guys. That was it. What's that? 10 minutes. Smashed it. Yeah. Let's just bang about ten
Nice.
of it. Let's bang 10 of these out now that we can get an early night. That sounds fantastic.
I think that was really, really nice actually, and a really lovely like window into van, or I'm saying van, it wasn't just van for you, but alternative living sustainably. And I really like that you kind of mentioned diesel there. And, we can't be perfect. Of course, if we're going to, say, live in a van or a narrow boat, there's going to be the fuel consumption element. There's going to be the pollution that comes with that. But yeah, if we can think about how we counteract some of those, some of the impact that we have when we travel with more sustainable actions, as you just outlined, what was it in Sardinia? Cheese out of someone's van?
Oh yeah, I had a knock on my door at like 8 a.m. and this guy had pulled up in his little, I think it was like a Ford Focus or something like that. It was a tiny car, and he just popped the boot and he had four massive wheels of cheese in there and some old weighing scales, and he's like, "You want to buy cheese?" So I was like, "Yeah, let's buy some cheese." So his dad made it, and he drove around with his dad in the front of the car and was selling cheese to people who were just sort of camping in Sardinia. It was awesome. It's
Wow,
24 month matured Parmigiano Reggiano. It was amazing. It was incredible.
that sounds just so wonderful. I love that. And one of the tips that I was writing tips earlier to share with listeners, and one of them was kind of try and source things locally. And I don't think you could get more local than that. I mean, he came to you, didn't he? I think
Yeah, it's
that's
like
awesome.
takeaway you didn't even know you wanted, which is fantastic.
Do you know what? That's a really nice way to think about it as well, because we live in a culture, and this is me going off on a little tangent, but it is relevant. We live in a culture where we can choose what we want when we want it, to the point where, like, I'm craving a burger. I can go on my phone and order one, and it'll arrive in probably less than half an hour. And I think you just highlighted something really nice there about maybe maybe not expecting to get exactly what we want when we want it, when we're trying to think about being a bit more ethical and sustainable when we're traveling, and embracing what we come across and the opportunities that arise and the people that we meet, and the man in the car with the cheese in his boot, you know, in his trunk if you live in America. So
Yeah,
yeah,
he wasn't walking around with like a lump of cheddar inside his shoe.
yeah.
Boot is what we call the storage part of a car. Look, I mean, this is, we're assuming that we're going to have American listeners by this point. It's not just our parents and Fred down the road. But I mean, you got to think big. You got to think big. I did lie. Fred doesn't exist. He might do, but I don't know him if he does. I think I should have slept more before this podcast. I think this is going to be interesting. It's going to be you navigating me through this. I think
That's all
so.
right. I'm used to that. I'm a therapist. It's what I do, and I'm really liking these little nuggets of like anecdotes that you're already bringing in. I think they're really nice and personal and real.
Do you know what? Something that's just popped into my brain. Speaking about traveling sustainably, I want to talk about flight and not like not me, sort of growing wings like a dream I had about a week ago. But you like, I I don't know whether, because obviously I think everyone should explore and everyone should be able to see the world and everyone should be able to sort of to travel to as many places as they want to do. I don't think that it's our responsibility to um how do I put this? I think that the responsibility of like air travel being more carbon friendly lies on the people who own the airlines and who are making the airplanes. Like we're getting a lot of plant-based foods in the world. We're getting a lot of green energy in the world. We're getting a lot of electric cars in the world. Should it be should it be my fault for wanting to go to, say, Tunisia, or wanting to go to Japan? I wanted to go and explore, but in the back of my mind thinking, oh, but I've got these air, like, should I really go because of the carbon footprint that I'm going to make? Is that something that I should be responsible for, or should it be, the airline companies of the world and the aeroplane builders of the world who are looking to make a more greener solution for this? What is your view on that?
I think it's tricky and probably divides quite a lot of people, and maybe some people find it's a bit controversial even. Like I think it's a really good question, and I really love. There's a woman who makes YouTube videos, Lena. I've forgotten her surname. I'll add her name to our show notes on this episode. She talks a lot about how to be kind of realistically more sustainable, and one of her videos talked about this. And she said something similar to you there, Seb, about kind of people should be allowed, it can be really important and meaningful to people to travel, to see other cultures, to learn about the world, new perspectives. And so her take on it was, going with intention. So I might go from, say, the UK to Japan. That's a big trip, isn't it? That's going to be a high carbon footprint, I guess, if that's the right phrase. Going with intention, maybe doing that, getting what you can out of it, as in kind of, learning about the culture and the place, and it being a meaningful trip for you, and knowing that, okay, I'm not gonna now take another long haul flight for X amount of time, and I'm going to spend a bit of time, like we were saying earlier, perhaps kind of counteracting a little bit the impact that might have had, by, I don't know, not buying new clothes, buying secondhand clothes for the next 6 months, or I don't know, maybe that's kind of not totally, it's not going to totally balance it out. But I suppose what I'm saying is it's important for us to go with intention to make the most of a trip as well. And I want to talk a little bit more about that later, how we might do that. And yeah, to maybe think about not jetting off every other weekend, I don't know, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it brings I was playing a little bit of devil's advocate there by throwing that question because I wanted to kind of see what your opinion was as well. And I do agree that, if we're going to go somewhere, we should, ideally, I would love to go everywhere by camper van. I've just bought, because obviously with my connection to van life and tent camping and alternative living, having written multiple books, I've combined all that and I've just bought a tent box for my car so I can kind of go somewhere in the car, which is a lot more energy and fuel efficient than the old van that I had was. Pop the top, and I've got everything I need there. A little burner in the back. I can use campsite facilities, those kind of things. So I'm just trying to experience a different way of travel. In an ideal world, I'd love to drive from here to China and um, and to see the world like that. I'd love to do it in an electric car. I'd love to be as green as possible. Obviously, that is for me currently it's a bit of a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. So that brings me back to reality, thinking, okay, well, I would love to get a plane and go to China, maybe in the next month or something, so I can spend a few weeks there experiencing everything, meeting some of the contributors from my books, checking out, the incredible landscape, traveling to Japan then from there, and then going into the forest and everything. I'd love to do that. And I think you're right to say that you should make the most of a place while you're there, maybe plan a few trips around the area, and then when you come back, do what you can to counteract that. It's the question of living that good life, living the just doing what you can. Like we can't all be perfect, but it was just a topic that come up recently because of I was just thinking about air travel and where the responsibility lies. Should we say, well, yeah, we're not going to, as a race of people, should we all, the human race, should we all just stay in one place and not go to different areas unless we can bike there or take a boat? What happens if you're afraid of the ocean? What happens if you're afraid of a bicycle? If you fell off one when you were 3 or something. Um, you know, or do we do what you said and get on that plane, go to that place, explore, come back and think, right, well, I'm going to make a few different sacrifices in my life to sort of help. It's a massive topic and one that everyone will have a different opinion on. And I know that recycling your tinfoil when you come home isn't going to make the trip to Japan on a plane and back okay. But as I said, then we can't all be perfect, and we have to just do what we can. And I think if the car companies are making electric vehicles now and motorbikes are coming out in electric motorbike companies, Harley Davidsons have been made electric. If surely there's something that can be done to try and make fuel more, aviation more energy efficient and sustainable and better for the environment, so that the world can remain a small place and people can meet other people from different cultures and then enrich and then enrich themselves with new foods and sights and sounds and inspirations for books and plays and music and stuff like that.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah,
I'm quite
absolutely.
philosophical when I want to be. I'm not just a bald lad from Keighley. I'm quite philosophical. I think when my life's over, it'll be sort of Aristotle, Plato, the Dalai Lama, and then Santa Barbara, just there with some of these amazing pearls of wisdom from this podcast.
Yeah, when he was tired, he became philosophical.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe I just need to sleep less, brain more. Now you can get on a t-shirt if you want. That's the next t-shirt idea.
Sleep less, brain more.
Yeah.
Interesting. Not sure how much I agree with it, but
Go on, get us back on track. Get us back on track quickly.
Well, I think we're kind of touching on various, as you said, it's a massive topic. I think that's important to say, and we could go in many directions with this. I'm going to have to mention the slice of pizza. What is it? A plushie?
It's a Jellycat toy. Just looking
It's a
at me from
Jellycat toy.
Yeah, it's what one of my friends bought it me for Christmas with the Italian connection. I just put it onto Zoom for Izzy just to try and sort of make her smile and just throw on a train of thought completely.
What is that? His arms hanging out the sides?
Yeah, it's a piece of pizza with arms. Yeah.
It's not just like stuffed crust that's like losing a bit of contents.
I never thought of it like that. They're made of corduroy. I don't think you put corduroy in a stuffed crust, would you?
Okay. No. Perhaps we can put a picture of him on our Instagram at some point.
Absolutely.
He could be our mascot, although he does make us hungry when we look at him. So
that's true. So, speaking of hunger, you were going to say something about sustainable travel, I think.
I was. Thank you. I was pointing out that, well, reiterating your point that it's a big topic. And you talked a little bit there about, should I just be, going on holiday or traveling to places that I could cycle to, for example, or even walk to. And I think that's, that is a good point. And that's something that I kind of popped in the little tips section that I was going to bring out later, which was, during COVID, for example, we all learned that, I think we created the term staycation during that time. Is that right? Have I got that right? Am I remembering?
I think that's when it came out. Yeah, the whole idea of the staycation, and because obviously we couldn't go to different countries, did we? So I know for one, I started exploring the Lake District way more in England, and people did sort of discover that they had a love. I think they fell in love with their own countries a lot more. Everyone always wants what they can't have, don't they? But then when you physically can't have it, you're like, okay, well, what have I got? What is there around me to enjoy? What is there around me to explore?
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going with that. I think it's one way also to counteract, if you do book a trip on a plane to Japan, if we were using this in an example, another way to counteract it is spend some time in your home country, spend some time even perhaps near where you live, if that's possible, and really see the place. And I've created a little kind of creative exercise that I'd like to offer that kind of highlights this concept a little bit, that I'll share with you at the end of the podcast, so stay tuned for that. But why not get to know somewhere near a home really well, or a place you haven't been before that's not that far away. And also there's different options in terms of, if the mode of transport, if the way of getting to the place is the main thing that is going to, increase your carbon footprint, increase your impact. Think about, the various forms of transport that might get you there that, might be a little slower. For example, my partner and I are going to come over to the UK in the summer. We're going to come for a month. We're going to move around in our car and try and visit, various relatives and friends. And we're going to get the ferry. And I don't know what the total, our carbon footprint will equal at the end of that trip, and if flying would have been more sustainable or not. But there are ways, perhaps we can try and find some and add them actually and share them with our listeners. There are some apps and various things that can help you kind of calculate how to reduce your carbon footprint when you're traveling. So maybe we can think about, together about what's a better way to get there, even if it's potentially slower. Is that possible for me? Is that doable? But I think we're focusing a lot on how we get there, and actually there's things we can do. Perhaps we can move into the things we can do when we're there, to try and make our travel experience more sustainable.
I will just say as well, we do fully understand that not everyone is in a position to be able to take a month to get on a ferry and go somewhere and spend a lot of time there. Not everyone's in a position to be able to spend, a year and a half in Europe in a camper van like I did. Some people have an allotted week they have to go on holiday with, and if they want to get to the other side of the world to see a relative or a loved one, or to visit somewhere they've always wanted to visit, they have to go by plane. So we understand that. We understand that that's an option that most people do want to take, which is why I've kind of brought up the devil's advocate thing of who should be the person who's feeling responsible with this. So, but yeah, like as you said, it's great that you can get on a ferry and go places. And when I did go to Europe in the camper van, I went on the ferry with the van. And if we're going to talk about when you're at a place, traveling around doing something, how can you stay sustainable and be ethical? I want to touch on the ethical thing because when I was traveling around a lot, one of my pet peeves is getting to a campsite or a wild camping spot and it being dirty. So we're talking crisp packets, food, bin bags, litter. In some cases, let's like not beat around the bush. Like people do just leave human waste in campsites and park up spots as well. And there have been a number
Pooping.
of, pardon.
Pooping, we're talking about.
We're talking pooping. We're talking pooping. Yeah. And there've been a lot of different. I mean, two examples. I went to a place called Mirador del Fito, which is probably not. I came into Bilbao and then went west along the northern coast
Towards Santander.
Yeah, and I went to. In fact, maybe I can't remember when I came into, but a place called Mirador del Fito next to a town called Bones, because I remember it was the best named town ever.
Yeah.
And I got to the top of there, and there was so much rubbish. I spent about an hour just picking up rubbish and putting it in a bin bag, and then walked down a little track to put into a bin. Because I thought, like, I want to spend a couple of days in this place and just like do some walking and experience it, And if I, leave a place as you would like it to be left for you, so other people can enjoy it further down the line. I've also had to clear poop out of water fountains before as well, because people have emptied their toilets in what they thought were drains that weren't drains. So like it's there's a lot of people out there who are traveling and being insanely disrespectful to places that other people use. And I think in large part that's why some places have now shut down for like wild camping or for like visitors in camper vans and stuff. The climate in Portugal and Spain is a lot different to how it was when I did it in 20 when I started in 2019. It's a lot different. And obviously COVID has a lot to do with that, but I do think if we learn to travel cleaner, and I'm not talking about the fuels. I mean, once we're in a place, if we're more respectful with what we leave behind and what we, the area that we would, we leave for other people to use for future generations. Not even just for like someone coming the next day, for future generations to enjoy these areas as well. We can just help to make the whole. I don't want to say world a better place because it sounds like I'm sort of going into a Michael Jackson song, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I do. I think it sounds like you've had some really horrible experiences, and I'm sure you won't be the only one. I'm sure some of our listeners will have been traveling and experienced something similar, unfortunately. And you're right. The face of or the what's the word? The way that van life looks in Spain and Portugal now is different. There was this huge kind of rise in the amount of people camping, taking vans and going and staying all around Spain and Portugal. And as a result, I think the rules and regulations, the laws here are a lot stricter now, which has its, pros and cons, I suppose. But something that was coming up for me when you were talking, Seb, was treating somewhere differently because it isn't our home. And one of the tips that I wrote down earlier was around not changing our behaviour, when we go away somewhere, when we travel somewhere, regarding, say, if you're someone who is conscious of water conservation or recycles or, buys secondhand, not changing our habits when we are somewhere else, still kind of maintaining that more sustainable way of doing things. And that goes as far as, treating the places that we visit with, as you say, the respect that, they deserve. And remembering that is someone else's home.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, how many people, will go to a hotel and kind of just, leave taps running and stuff, and maybe not. I don't know. I think there's that sense of I'm on holidays, so I can kind of do what I want, and it doesn't matter. But everything does matter. Whether you're in an Airbnb and you're just leaving the plates out and leaving the bin bags and, just kind of being messy, to if you're at a campsite and decide to leave a bin bag for when you leave, and then a fox comes and tears it open, and then there's food everywhere for when the next person comes. It's just being respectful. And I guess, do respectful and ethical tie in together for you?
Yeah, I suppose. I think ethical is maybe, I don't know, speaks a little bit of, or a lot about where our money's going as well. Something I wanted to point out or highlight was kind of thinking about, and you brought it in right at the beginning, buying cheese from a local man from his car. Putting your money into ethical places, I think, is a really important way of traveling ethically and more sustainably. And what I mean by that is kind of choosing smaller local businesses, for example, to put your money into. Maybe hotels, booking a small hotel, family run, over a chain, or when you're going out to eat, choosing places that source local food, choosing activities that perhaps encompass something of the history of the place, or an opportunity where you can learn something of the culture of the place from the people of that land. People who are keeping the culture alive. I think all that is kind of part of a more ethical way of traveling. Making sure you're putting your money in the I'm saying right places in like quotation marks, but
for me,
being conscious.
Sorry, you go.
But just being conscious of where your money's going, I think.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like going to, if you go to Italy and end up going to a Starbucks, the amount of amazing espresso. I mean, I can remember I spent about 5 weeks in a place called Sarzana when my camper van broke down. I mean, this is quite a good example, actually. So, I mean, I was already traveling quite ethically and buying from the local markets and cheese cars that rocked up without me realizing, and the breakdown company that I use in the UK, they put me up into, they give me some money to use. I said, well, can I use an Airbnb? So I'm, paying a local person for their house and their time. So, I ended up staying in this Airbnb, which was fantastic. And the owner was lovely. She gave me some tips on local places to go and the best places to get ice cream and the best places to get coffee and to eat out and the best places to buy fruit and stuff. And then, the coffees and the ice creams ended up being €2.50 for both. You get 2 scoops of Nutella ice cream and then an espresso for €2.50. And it's these things that if you go to, let's say, if you go to a popular holiday destination and book through, now I'm not saying anything against travel agencies here. There's some great packages you can get, and there's something for everybody and everybody's price bracket. But generally, if you go to an all-inclusive hotel where everything's there, and you're gonna told sort of this is everything's there for you. You don't look around, you don't explore. It's a different experience to if you just find yourself in a random village and you're just sort of saying, well, where's good to go, what's good to do, and you're putting your money back into people's livelihoods that they've in some cases had since for generation upon generation. I remember seeing a family who were walking around Sarzana, and they had a door replacing business because to buy a new door is so expensive, so they just keep repairing the old ones. And that's that kind of sustainability I guess we've been talking about all the way through, right? Rather than just throwing away, we're kind of reusing, repairing, and keeping something alive, keeping going, and not being as wasteful as we perhaps are in everyday life.
Yeah, I had a real strong image. It's a nice scene that you painted there in my mind with the door, and it made me think about kind of the shiny, kind of newness of going to a hotel with, I don't know, a spa and a pool, and eating in the restaurant, and walking down to maybe the beach that's part of the hotel that, they've bought, and only the people who visit the hotel are allowed on, for example, and kind of this like shiny bubble that holidays perhaps can end up being. And actually when we're a little bit, perhaps it's about being pushed out of our comfort zone a little bit, or perhaps it's simply about being open to connecting with people, the local people. But yeah, I just had this really kind of vivid image of this like shiny bubble versus, I don't know, something a little bit more flowy and a little bit more grounded and rooted in the place. When you were talking about that door, and maybe being in a little town and being able to put your money into the local pub, or cideria that it's called here. They drink a lot of cider here. So yeah, just reiterating what you're saying, I suppose.
Yeah, but you do it in such a succinct way, Izzy. That's why people tune into this podcast. They fast forward a bit with the low dulcet tones and get to the recap that you give, and I'm fine with that. It's absolutely fine. But it's like today, like, I mean, where I live in the UK is right by a high street, and the high street is kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a dying thing. We have lots of shopping centres and industrial estates, and big IKEAs, or places where you can go and park up, and there's everything from a Nando's to a River Island to a TK Maxx to a Walmart type shopping centre. So the high street with your your local hardware store, your local butcher, your local health food shop, your local chemist. It's not a huge thing. I know from when I grew up in the little village that I grew up in, there was a greengrocer's, a butcher's, not a candlestick maker, but everything else besides. And, one after another, they all disappeared and just turned to houses. So having this high street where you can sort of go and give money to the local owner rather than just jumping on Amazon or eBay is amazing. And they appreciate it, and you get that human interaction as well, which is incredible. The thing with traveling sustainably, and for me, like, and putting yourself in these situations is, going into a little hardware store in Italy and asking, like, I need this fuse, and just little things like that, because that interaction then gets you talking about something else, and you're giving more information that you wouldn't have got if you don't, I don't know, sort of put yourself out of your comfort zone and go and look for it. But having the high street, getting back to that point, like, you can see where your money's going. You can ask where your fruit and vegetables are coming from. You can ask where your meat's coming from. You can pinpoint, where your trade is going and help them to carry on with their businesses, and supporting small businesses, whether you're in a car park in Sardinia, or whether you're, here in the UK, or, where Izzy is in Spain. Like it just helps to keep the world turning, and it helps people with small businesses to keep thriving, and in return they will give you an experience that you wouldn't have got if you hadn't, just tried something new.
Totally. And that brings me back to that point earlier about what's your intention for travel. And I think that's a really important one that we actually talked about before, didn't we? A couple of episodes ago, when we were talking about kind of reasons why we might want to travel or travel alternatively, or narrowing down our intention, our personal intention for going is important. If you want to go and relax and switch off from, have as some people call it, a digital detox or a screen detox, or great, but perhaps choose somewhere like a sustainable, what's the word I'm looking for? Like there are places that you can go and kind of be intentionally switched off. Maybe they don't have Wi-Fi, or they have Wi-Fi in like
a retreat.
Yeah, kind of like a retreat, like a sustainable retreat centre kind of thing. Or, if you're a bit more like Seb, perhaps go take your tent and camp somewhere, have your rest time through just being out in nature. For me, I find it incredibly restorative and relaxing to be kind of in a forest in the middle of nowhere if I can be, and being off the beaten track, it can be quite a good way of switching off and relaxing, if that's the way you replenish yourself, I suppose. But going back to that idea of intention, why do you want to go? Do you want to go to learn something? Do you want to go to meet someone in particular? Do you want to go to experience the food? What are the ways you can do that are a little bit more ethical or a little bit more sustainable?
And it's totally all right to just answer that question by saying, do you know what? I work so hard. I work, 60-hour weeks. I want to go to Fuerteventura and lay by a pool and read a book and do absolutely nothing. That's totally fine as well. But is there anything else that you can, I guess, what we're discussing here is, while you're there, maybe consider just not eating in at the hotel one night at the chain, and going out into the little town and finding, the smallest taverna in the back of, away from all the main ones on the front, where, some old couple have been making this spectacular specialist food for, their entire lives. And it's just one of these, kind of, you got to eat it to believe it kind of places. Or as he was saying, when, if you want to do one of those holidays and you want nothing to do with that because you just want to unwind, is there a way that you can get there that is more sustainable? If you can't, and jumping on the first Ryanair is all you can afford to do, then when you come home, try and think of some different things that you can do to offset the carbon that you've done if you want to be more sustainable there. Say, oh, well, in that case, I'm going to try and drive less and get the bus or get the train, when I get back, to kind of counteract that. And if you already do all those things, then, just pat yourself on the back because you're already winning.
You're winning. You have completed it, mate.
Yeah, you've completed it, mate, and tune into the next episode because this one isn't for you.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, that's also a good point. I think there'll be some listeners out there who are actually really knowledgeable about this, and are doing some really fab things in terms of ethical, sustainable travel. And actually, one of my friends here has recently just started working for a company. They're a slow travel company, they call themselves. What they offer, it's very kind of, I think I'm going to use the word luxury to describe it. So, it certainly isn't going to be accessible for everyone. But the idea of it is you can use them to book your accommodation and your experiences and your food, and that it's coming from the most local, real sources that it possibly can, which is a really nice idea. There are these little companies popping up that can actually do this for you, and again, like, the price tag is probably going to be really high, particularly because they're kind of few and far between at the moment. But I feel like it's going to be a growing industry, slow, sustainable travel agencies, perhaps. Or maybe we need to jump on it, Seb. Maybe.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking while you're saying this, this is a business idea that we don't want to be sort of sharing out with the wider world, because I reckon we can get in on this.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Trips to Asturias.
Yeah, trips to Asturias and to Skipton. That sounds all right, doesn't it?
To Skipton, yeah.
Yeah. Gateway to the Dales. No, I think you're right with that. Is if we can, I mean, I would think you should share the name of that company as well, because that'd be really good for people who do want to sort of log on to kind of do this kind of thing. That'd be really useful. And if we can travel slow, and you want to make a trip, I think that's why I'm biased in camper vanning and tent boxing, because you can drive to the place you're going to go to and enjoy places on the way. When I went to Sardinia, I passed through. I went to the Netherlands and then drove from there down through Switzerland into Italy. And then, into Sardinia. And obviously, yes, I was in a diesel car. I can't escape that fact, but I was getting there slowly, and I was, it took maybe like a week to get to Italy, and I was seeing places and on the way. So I was making like more of a journey of it. It's one of your favorite phrases to say something about, like, enjoy the journey, isn't it? I think that's basically your catchphrase.
To say that's one of my favourite phrases would be a bit unfair, because I know it's such a cliche, but it's probably one of my used phrases. Yeah.
So therefore, if it's one of your most used phrases, one could say it's one of your favourite phrases. Oh. I mean, I'm looking behind you now and I can see a massive live, laugh, love. I can't really want to joke.
Live, laugh, love. Imagine. Do you know what you reminded me of? And I think it's something nice to just mention here, because during my time in my van, I spent some time moving reasonably quickly from place to place. And then as the weather in Italy started to get chillier, I decided to stop and do a workaway placement. So there's different websites, if you're not familiar with Workaway, different websites and organisations that kind of pair you up. I think we've talked about this before, haven't we? Pair you up with someone who wants maybe some help, I don't know, building their farm or gardening or whatever it is. And in return, they give you accommodation or food or sometimes money. And so I did Workaway in Italy and spent, I think it was a week, a gorgeous family's place. They were kind of in the sticks. There were wolves howling at night. We were that kind of, that kind of rural, I suppose is the word. And they were really slowly building their kind of sustainable farm from scratch, by themselves, by hand, with local friends and Workaway volunteers. And that was a really, really lovely way to slow down, to really slow down, to get to know some people. And actually what was great about that experience was I learned a few techniques for cultivating a veg garden and collecting rainwater. And this kind of system that you can put in place to then use that rainwater to heat your house. These kinds of really interesting things that people are doing. And I got a real kind of first-hand experience of that. And so it's another option for a slow travel alternative, and you're likely to get something really, really rich from that experience. I mean, obviously not every experience is going to be amazing and rewarding, but if you're careful and perhaps, you can chat to your potential hosts beforehand and get to know them a bit, you could find an experience that's going to be quite meaningful to you, and you'll also be able to give something back to them. I gave physical labour in the form of digging a lot of the time, and sometimes cooking, and even just cleaning the house, and that walking their dogs even. So yeah, just another idea.
I like that you sort of said that, yeah, I mean, you kind of brought us really full circle with that, which is really nice, because you've just explained a load of different ways of being self-sustainable, and how traveling and slowing down can end up leading to you learning a lot of new skills that you can bring back home with you to use wherever you are in the world, whatever walk of life you're in, for your generation, for different generations, learning how to do things differently, opening your mind to different possibilities when you slow down, which is what this podcast is all about, and discovering, the different ways that the world works. And I always remember that a friend of mine once asked another guy in the group where tuna came from, because he couldn't understand that it came from the sea, because it always just arrived in tins, and wow. that's exactly, so that's like a really, that's quite mad that someone doesn't understand that tuna fish comes from the sea. But a lot of people might not realize that they can grow their own vegetables, that they can build their own structures, that they can collect their own rainwater to use for showers or for heating with steam to produce all these old, I say old, all these like traditional methods of cooking and cultivating and living that we do lose. I think when you go to places and just slow down a little bit and go off the beaten track and see how they do things, in different areas, can sort of bring you literally back down to earth a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. It was certainly, that experience for me was really grounding, and really what I needed. I was feeling like I needed rest, but I didn't know what kind of rest I needed. And actually, even though I was busy manually, physically every day, it was the rest that I wanted, because I was rooted in one place, and I really got to know the place, even in a week. Maybe it was 10 days, but still it was a short amount of time. But because I was really engaging in literally the land as well as the people there, I felt really rooted there, and I just needed that moment of feeling connected to a place, because I'd been moving from one place to another for, I think it was a good few weeks. I'd been doing that. So I like how you phrased that. And yeah, I think there's something to be said for connecting to the land in that kind of way, not necessarily literally by digging it, but being somewhere and perhaps learning about, for me, I find it fascinating, and I know this won't resonate with everyone, but kind of learning about the actual land that you're on, perhaps, the territory, the conflict, even. So many places, unfortunately, have been, taken from people, and, kind of learning or bringing your awareness to, the actual place that you're visiting can be a really grounding experience to have, I think. And something that I love to do is I make paint from earth pigments. So I take a little bit of rock or clay or earth from mostly local places around where I live. But you could do this traveling, and I turn them into paints. And that, for me, that's a really kind of rooting or grounding way of physically connecting with the place that I am, and being quite mindful of the actual earth that we're on, because I think we can forget to actually feel connected to the earth beneath us. And essentially that's all we've got, isn't it? That is, our connection to the earth is actually so vital. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about that.
You have that tone of voice that you usually use when you're about to sort of lead into the exercise segment of the podcast as well. So I'm looking at I'm looking at you on Zoom. I'm hearing. I always know it's coming because I start to feel really relaxed, and I think it's like a false sense of security that you lull me into, and then you throw this exercise that I have to do. So I think it's time you lay. I think it's time you lay it on me and the listeners, and then we can see what we've got to do for next week.
That's a really good idea, because it actually leads quite nicely, and so I'm glad you could tell that with the subconsciously my like tone of voice was shifting us into a different gear. So yeah, for this week, and I'd love you listeners to give this a go if it feels, it resonates with you, and share your experience of it on Instagram and tag us. So this week's is about taking a walk in your local area. So I'm not asking you to, travel anywhere, although this can be done whilst you're traveling as well. But take a walk around your local area, and choose 3 things that interest you. So I say that very loosely and broadly, 3 things that interest you. So it might be things that catch your eye. It might be things that you pass every day, and, maybe at one point you found them intriguing or pleasing, but you're perhaps, you walk past it so frequently that you're not, you don't even notice it now. So I want you to go on this walk, with the intention to observe and get curious. Choose 3 things that interest you, and either sketch, photograph, paint, or write about, or get creative about these 3 things. It can be anything. I'm thinking, for me, there's a particular tree that I walk past most days, that I don't pay much attention to, but at certain times of year, all the starlings sit in it and sing, and it's a really beautiful thing to experience, because they're so loud. There's so many of them. So I'd love to maybe go and draw that tree and try and get a recording of the starlings if they're there. So it's just something simple like that, and just answer these questions. What do you notice when you take time to slow down and look? How does it feel in your body? And the aim of the practice is just to, as I say, to connect with the places that you visit and foster a sense of curiosity and even inspiration, if possible, from the things around you.
I always think we don't look up often enough either. When I walk the dog, and I go up into the local woods, and I look up and I look at the overhanging branches and the changing of the seasons and everything. I actually wrote about this for an article that I was doing recently. And I was paddleboarding, and it took me a long time to get down this lake, and as I was going, I was just looking around, and it's the first time I kind of noticed that the leaves were kind of getting a bit of an orangey green. They were starting to turn, and I was looking at the shapes of trees again, because it was taking me ages to go past them all. And and then once you get to the shore and you look up as well, and then you can, you see birds in the trees, like you were just saying. Then we look down at the ground so often, and we're not kind of paying attention to. I mean, how many people do you see walking around on their phones? And we're all guilty of it at times. If we're checking bus timetables or trains or replying to a message, and we're walking, and we could miss something incredible that's just in front of us. So I'm really excited to do this one as well, and just to sort of find my own version of the Starling tree and, just sort of be at peace in a lovely place. That sounds fantastic.
Oh, that's so nice, Seb. Yeah, I'm excited to hear how you get on and how our listeners get on with that one and, what comes out of that. And yeah, you're right. I think we spend a lot of time looking down, and actually I talk in my therapy sessions quite often about the nervous system, and there's something physiological happens when we look up as opposed to down. And it does shift something even really in a really small way in our nervous system, in our mind, in our brain, in our bodies. So yeah, that's a great little nudge for people. Next time you're outside, look up and see what you notice.
Thanks very much for checking out this episode of the Slow Thinking Podcast. Don't forget, you can follow us on Instagram at the Slow Thinking Podcast.
And if you give any of our exercises a try, do share them with us by tagging us on there. And if you'd like to send us an email, you can at slowthinkingpod@gmail.com. See you next time.